Welcome to the third and final part of our three-part video series on Coder. This video will focus on enhancing security and governance in development environments using Coder. We'll focus on three features that Coder offers, which are audit logging, browser-only connections, and role-based access control. These features collectively strengthen the security and governance framework for your development environments. Stay tuned as we explore a real-world application along with a demo on implementing these features to improve the way your developers work. Let's see how we can enhance security and governance in development environments using Coder. Centralized control and governance. There are three aspects that we're going to cover in this video. The first is audit logging, then browser-only connections, and RBAC. First off is audit logging. I took a screenshot of my audit log inside of Coder. You can see the different users that are interacting here, and we can see where they came from, what device they're on, what browser, some of the status codes as well. So it really keeps a complete audit log of everything that anybody has done. There's a list of tracked items that you can see in the documentation. There's also a REST API endpoint that you can hit and get whatever you're looking for. You can also send your logs to Splunk and other SIMs as well. Next up is the browser-only connections feature. Regulated and highly secure industries like financial services, defense, and intelligence require centralized approvals for developers to install any kind of local tools. These approvals block teams for weeks, hurting velocity. And since Coder workspaces are isolated from local desktops, new tools are approved by default. Developers just need a browser or an SSH connection to start coding. As you can see here, this browser-only connections feature in Enterprise is helpful because it only allows us to access the workspace via a code server or a terminal, and it can't use my desktop IDE for that. And you can see here my code space with code server and terminal available, and I can't use that desktop IDE that we saw in the previous videos. Another reason why this is important is to reduce exfiltration risk. If you're allowing contractors and third-party developers to use their own local environments to code, then all of a sudden you have an exfiltration risk because that code now is outside of your control. And code being an intellectual property, this is a big concern for organizations. So having this browser-only connection allows Coder to move the intellectual property into workspaces on your own organization's on-prem or public cloud infrastructure, which significantly reduces financial and reputational risk. Let's now talk about RBAC. As you can see in the screenshot here, I have multiple groups. There's a group that has everybody in it. That's on by default. There's a devs group, a platform engineers group. And we use RBAC to define which users and groups can use specific templates in Coder. These can be defined in Coder, or you can sync them from your identity provider. So here, this particular template, Hetzner Cloud, I've only allowed the platform engineers group, and their permission is to use this template. So can read and use this template to create workspaces. You could also allow them to become admins on this template so they can do things like updating the template with new versions and metadata and so on. Let's take a real-world example, and this time it's Discord. So Discord is really a polyglot development environment where the software development involves multiple languages such as Python, TypeScript, Rust, Elixir, C, and C++, and supports all major platforms. From an enhanced security point of view, transitioning to Coder provided enhanced security features, including built-in identity and access management. They were running on EC2 instances in AWS using Coder. From an immutability and reproducibility perspective, these two are crucial for maintaining consistent and secure development environments. Finally, from a networking stack perspective, the adoption of Tailscale and WireGuard in Coder's version 2 product improved the networking stack, offering more stable and secure connections. Now let's take a look at our demo scenario for this video. And let's assume we're enhancing security and governance for a government agency. The steps we're going to take is first, we're going to turn on browser-only connections. And this is an environment variable inside of our Helm chart. Then we're going to enable RBAC for templates. And finally, we're going to take a look at our audit logs. So let's go ahead and get started with our demo. All right, the first thing we need to do to enable our browser-only connection is to update our environment variables inside of our values.yaml file for our Helm chart. So I'm really splitting the values.yaml into two files. There's a secrets.yaml and a values.yaml. And I have a secrets example.yaml for you. The reason is I have some secrets in here that I don't want to share, and the secrets.yaml is not getting pushed to GitHub. So you can see some of those, like the GitHub OAuth 2 tokens and stuff like that. But really at the very bottom, coder browser only, this is what you want to add, and the value is true. And then upgrade your Helm chart and you're good to go. Now, if you go to deployments and go under security, you'll notice if you scroll down a little bit that browser only connections are now enabled. And as you can see, it's an enterprise feature. What we can do now is if we go to our template and pick on our coder generic playground, and let's go ahead and create a workspace out of that. And let's call this browser only since I used that before. And go ahead and create the workspace. And you'll see that we won't have access to be able to use our own IDE, my Visual Studio Code, on my desktop, and we'll only be limited to using the code server and the terminal. So anything web-based, we're allowed to access. You can see this in the browser-only connections under Enterprise in the documentation. So you can use the browser-only flag to the coder server command, or as we just saw, the coder underscore browser underscore only environment variable equals to true. And here are the web IDEs that are supported under there. You can see the web terminal, SSH. Here are some examples like Jupyter Lab as well. So if you scroll down, you can add really anything, Discord, a link to Discord, or public Slack link to that. So code server is what we're used to. There's also VS Code Web, which is Microsoft version of code server, if you will, and you have some access to certain extensions like the GitHub Copilot extension. And here's Jupyter Lab, so you can add that to your template if you wish. And there is RStudio as well. That's also available. And you have also Airflow. And we can also have a file browser in our template. And all of that gets accessed through the web. Let's see how our workspace is doing, and it looks like it has completed. And again, it's just code server and terminal. So terminal just gives us our terminal, and you can see we have our Docker commands that we've seen before. I have my shell, it looks nice. I can click, of course, on code server, and you can give this to your developers, to your offshore developers, maybe contractors, and so on, knowing that the code itself is secure and they don't have it on their local machines. It is, again, through a web browser. And the same experience that you would have using an IDE on a desktop, you have it now in the browser, as we have seen before with our extensions and everything else. Let's now talk about RBAC. And if you go under users, you see that we have a few groups I've created. I have devs and platform engineers. Everyone is just a group that is by default as you create a coder instance. We can see the platform engineers. I've put myself here as the owner here. And if you look at devs, this is another account that I have as well. So once you've set that up, we can go under templates, and then we can decide who has access to which templates by going to the settings. And under permissions, you can see that in this case, this template, the Coder Hetzner Cloud template, is only accessible to the platform engineers. And these platform engineers can read and use this template to create workspaces, but they can't really modify the template. They can't add a new version and so on. That's an admin functionality. You can see we can just switch it around here. So if I bring in another browser window here, and in this case, I'm a different user, the info or TechAid user here. And if I refresh this, you can see the templates I have access to is only the Coder generic playground. I don't have access to the Coder Hetzner cloud. And the Coder generic playground, you can see that I don't have admin access. I can see versions, embed, docs, and so on. If I change that from here, from the admin user, and go back to the generic playground and look at the settings and look at the permissions, I see that everybody has permissions, but I can also specify the devs, for example, that they can be admins. So now the devs are admins, meaning that if I go back here and refresh the page, I see that I've opened up source code, insights, embeds as well. But source code, important here is that I can change the template, edit a script in the template, edit any of the Terraform configuration files. And that is very powerful when you are expanding this to your organization, and you can create these groups and you can sync these groups to your identity provider. You can add your groups, let's say from Okta or Azure AD, and sync those so that they match what you're looking for with the permissions and everything else. Finally, let's take a look at the audit logs. And if we go under audit, I can see everything that has happened. I see 46 logs. You can see Sam Gabriel here. I've updated this template and I can see what IP it came from, which OS I'm on, what browser, and some status codes as well. And if I click on any of these, actually, it's pretty helpful. It shows me what has changed. A group ACL here is now empty. Let's see this one here or this one. I think these are all me just making very simple changes. Here's a template version ID that has changed. This one is just automatic updates. I can see these have changed, right? So it gives you a little bit more details. I can see the TechAid user when they registered. So these audit logs are helpful, of course, to get to understand who's doing what. And you can filter those depending on a number of resource types that we see here. We can also filter on the actions and also, of course, the users. If you're curious to know what tracked events are available, you can go to the audit logs under administration in the Coder docs. You can see here by resource and field and which are tracked and which are not tracked for each one of those resources. So API key, login, logout, register, create, delete. You can see created at, expires at. These are being tracked, hash, secret, not, and so on. The audit, OAuth, convert state, group, custom role, and so on. So you can go through here and see exactly what is being tracked from an audit logs perspective. You can see filtering logs. We can use the REST API. So audit logs can be accessed through our REST API. And you can find detailed information under this endpoint documentation. Here's an example of a service log. And of course, you can send those logs to Splunk or any other SIM that you're using, as you can see here. So then when we look at the enterprise features versus open source, you can see that these features are targeting larger organizations, and Coder kind of estimates anybody that has more than 50 developers, you're probably going to want to look at enterprise. So from a scaling perspective, high availability, and you can see from workspace proxies that I mentioned before to reduce latency depending on where your developers are coming from, to the governance and security piece that we covered in this video, audit logging, browser-only connections, and RBAC, to cost controls we saw in the previous videos, workspace lifetime. You can also have quotas that are attached to certain groups of how much they can consume, how many credits that they consume. Also user management, groups, and roles, and so on. And this kind of gives you an idea of when to move from open source to enterprise. And that's it for this video. We highlighted how Coder enhances security and governance in development environments through centralized control. We covered three main features: audit logging, browser-only connections, and role-based access control. We also discussed Discord's success story in adopting Coder. I encourage you to take a closer look at Coder for your organization. I believe it can really enhance the way your developers are working today. Thanks for watching.